Thank you for coming to another edition of Barbershop Therapy. I got a special show for you today. I'm here with a group of people that are very talented. Starting with the 100 Black Men of America group, Triangle East. Here with Mr. Patrick Lyons, and a host of other gentlemen that are very experienced in what they're here to do. So I want to kick it over to Patrick real quick to give you a little background on the 100.
Thank you, Jimmy. Just to kind of give a background on what the 100 Black Men is about, the organization was founded in the 1960s, 1963, and it was started in New York City as a way to improve the economic opportunities for African Americans and also increase the educational opportunities for our youth. In the 1980s, the organization expanded nationally, and the headquarters now is in in Atlanta, Georgia. And the Triangle East chapter was started in '97. And our four main pillars of the 100 Black Men are mentoring, education, health and wellness, and economic empowerment. We are here today to focus on some of our health and wellness initiatives. We have a partnership with our national organization for a program called Take Action for Health. And that program is encouraging us to get African Americans to get health screenings. And this is important because, if you're healthy, it's good to just get confirmation that you are healthy. But if you have some health issues, it's good to go ahead and get into the doctor so that you can get help for those things. So we're excited that, Jimmy Evans wanted to do this partnership with us. And today, our focus is going to be on health, mental health and physical health. We think those are very important issues in our community, and we wanted to have this discussion so that we could not only talk about the issues, but also try to talk about solutions, because a lot of times we sit back and talk about the problems ad nauseum, but we need to come up with solutions, and we want to bring some like-minded organizations to the table. And so that's why we're here today. And we hope that this is not going to just be the only one. We want to have future roundtable discussions on other topics as well, as far as your financial health. We have some financial experts in here as well, so we will plan for that in the future. But at this point, I will pass the mic on to our panelists.
Hello, my name is Herbert Miles. I am originally from South Carolina. I am a practicing emergency medicine physician here in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm part of the WEPA, which stands for Wake Emergency Physicians Group, and we provide the emergency services for the Wake Med Health System. I've been here in the Raleigh area for about 17 years. Kind of got invited to this panel late, but I told Jimmy I'm always here to support his vision, and so I'm here to try to give any type perspective and insight that I can give as a medical professional as we discuss the health and wellness pillar of the 100 Black Men Initiative.
Good evening. My name is Victor Jones. I am a Raleigh native. I've been in Rocky Mount, North Carolina for about 25 years now. I am a licensed clinical social worker, a licensed clinical addiction specialist, and a resilience educator. And by that I mean I work with the way that our brains and our bodies work together for our health. One of the things that was, let's say, new to me, even as a mental health therapist, was the connection of our bodies to our brains. And that's some of the emerging understanding of the science of wellness that is coming forward now over the last 25 years actually, but it's still slowly creeping in. So I work with large groups of people as well as with small groups on practicing specific skills to take better care of ourselves, to help ourselves heal, to connect with what is already in our bodies and in our brains to help us to be healthier.
Awesome. Also, I would like to have the gentlemen introduce yourselves around the room. We're going to pass the mic around also, so we can just get a brief introduction of everybody that's in the room. CJ is going to do that for us. Thank you.
So I'll go first. I'm CJ Guyan. I'm the secretary of the 100 Black Men Triangle East chapter. My day job is a QA tester at T-Mobile.
Jerome Jackson, originally from Summerville, South Carolina. I've been in Cary for about 7 years, a member of the 100 for about 3. By profession, I'm a project manager.
Hi, everyone. I'm Adrian Stevenson. I'm originally from Murfreesboro, North Carolina. I've been in Raleigh for the last 27 years. The owner of Any Day Heating and Cooling office is located in Garner.
Good evening, everybody. Richard Brown. I am actually originally from Orangeburg, South Carolina. I've been with the 100 for about 3 years now. I've been in Raleigh for about 7. I am a project manager by trade. I am also the VP of Professional Development for the Project Management Institute chapter here in North Carolina.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Carlos Webb. I joined 100 back in 2020. My day job is IT, work for UNC Chapel Hill. I'm also an avid runner and marathoner, and so anyone's interested in getting into distance running, you don't have to run marathons, but I'm here to help you get started.
My name is Brandon Norwood. I am looking to be a new member of the 100, and I own my own financial planning business called O City Financial.
Hello, my name is Demetrius Harvey from Raleigh, North Carolina. I've been living in Wilson for the last 12, 13 years. I also, too, run a private client financial services practice, Harvey & Associates Financial Group, LLC.
Hello, my name is Gary Vital. I am the Education Committee Chair for the 100 Black Men of Triangle East. I've been a member of the organization for approximately 17 years now, on and off, and about the same amount of time a resident of Durham. Normally, you'd see me in front of a college classroom, but I'm starting to convince myself that I need to consider retirement, or at least half retirement.
Hey, I'm Brad Barnes. I'm the Associate Branch Director for this one. Thank you guys so much for allowing us to have you here, for you guys choosing us to be here. And I'm in charge of the youth department.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jamel Wallace. I'm born and raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I've been here in the Raleigh-Durham area for about 9 months. I'm looking to become a member of the 100 Black Men of the Triangle Point East. My profession is I'm a re-entry instructor at Wake County Detention Center.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Vincent Johnson, and I'm representing Day-to-Day Dash, which is a nonprofit which is under Family Resource Center, and basically what we aim to do here is help bridge the gap between children and their fathers. All right, in case you couldn't. Just to help fathers bridge that gap that sometimes occurs for a variety of reasons. You know, just because you're not with mom doesn't mean it's still not your baby. That's right. Unfortunately, that fatherhood journey comes with a lot of trials and tribulations that we might not anticipate when we in the midst of making that child. You know, so that's where we come in. I'm a retired police officer here in Raleigh. Philadelphia's my home. Fly Eagles fly, of course. I came to school down here. Met Jimmy.
We're not gonna go that far back. We're not gonna go that far.
A little while back, yeah. But nonetheless, I'm happy to be here, and I'm sure I'll learn a lot from you. Thank you.
My name is Jermaine. I have to, so I got to take it all the way back. I was born in Trenton, and then I hear a lot of South Carolina in here. I lived in South Carolina for about 5 years, so when he says Somerville, I lived in Charleston for about 5 years. That's where I started in the home building business. So I'm in home building and development. Now I'm in 3-story garden style apartment work on the development and operations side. Really happy to be here. I've heard a lot about the organization over the years. I've got a couple of partners of mine that they're members up in D.C., in the D.C. area. They rave about it. Attempted to get involved a couple years back. It was COVID, though, so it was a little bit difficult. So I'm really happy to be here. Ironically, I'm about to bring a chapter of Black Boys Code here to the Triangle. So I was happy to hear there's some IT professionals in the room. I think it's an extremely important thing for us to get our young people engaged in what I call the new trade of this century. So really excited to be here. Excited to learn about what we're going to learn about tonight, because that health and wellness drives everything else, man.
My name is Glenn Warren. I'm from D.C. Not District of Columbia, but been to North Carolina, way down. You know what that is. Anyway, but, I'm a retired social worker for Wake County Human Services. I also run a nonprofit called Fathers Forever, which is a nonprofit in Wake County. We deal with risk of gathering at risk of going to jail for non-child support. We provide 12 classes of fatherhood. We also have 38 beds in Wake County for the guys getting out of prison. They come to us for 90 days. We help them find jobs and help them get back with their family. I'm glad to be here tonight.
Good evening. My name is G. Warren. I represent Fathers Forever as well. I operate transitional houses. We also have a car wash up and running, a temp service, clothes closet, food pantry, and I'm just here trying to learn from everybody.
Amazing, amazing. Listen, so gentlemen, this is for me, Jimmy Evans with Barbershop Therapy. I deal with people on a daily basis, and one of my skill sets is putting networks together and putting people together. And I felt like the best way to do that was for us to jump right in and get a group of people that are doing things that we need to have done. Instead of everybody moving in their own directions, we should, have the ability to start coming together as black men. And this is why initially we had a conversation with Patrick and 100 Black Men, and CJ put us together. So with that being said, man, I like to just kind of go over a couple of topics and get a good conversation going on them. And we're having Dr. Miles here on the panel help us to dig into the mistrust of the medical industry by black men. We're talking about having screenings and going to see the doctor and why we don't go to see the doctor. Dr. Miles, would you like to elaborate a little bit on that?
So it's definitely facts. There has been medical studies that show that blacks in general, but particularly black men, we have a mistrust of the medical system, and so we're less likely to seek medical care for that reason. And some of it's well-founded. We're all familiar with things like the Tuskegee experiment, which wasn't that long ago. But the other thing is that what we found, barriers and reasons that black men don't want to seek care, because there's not enough of us who are physicians and mental health professionals. And it's been found that if you can see a provider who looks like you and who can deliver culturally sensitive care, you're going to have better outcomes. So some of the barrier and some of the reason we mistrust the system is because we don't have a lot of people taking care of us who look like us, who understand us culturally, and who understand our unique needs. The other issue is very often because of other social determinants. A lot of times we suffer more from poverty. We have less education, and those types of things means that even a lot of times when we do seek care, we oftentimes get a lower quality of care. And so that just feeds the mistrust, because you finally do make the decision to go see a doctor, but you don't get quality care, or you feel like the doctor didn't do anything, or you feel like, my white counterpart went with the same complaint and got the $1 million workup. I went with the same complaint and the doctor talked to me for 2 minutes and did nothing. So there's a lot of things that feed into it. But hopefully in the room today, we can start talking about some solutions and how we start to get a better trust for the healthcare system.
With that being said, Victor, could you speak to the mental side of just seeking care, and what is that, how does that work into actually going to the doctor for the first time?
When it comes to seeking mental health care on the physical side? I'm trying to catch up on the question. So on the physical side, but the mental. Well, I'll say in our communities, there's often a lot of stigma about seeking mental health care. And sometimes as black men, we're told that we should be strong enough not to need help, or that somehow makes us weak. So there's a lot of stigma within our community towards that issue to begin with. So giving ourselves permission to reach out, even to reach out to someone that we see is struggling. If we see someone struggling, we can have some reactions within our own bodies about going into somebody else's territory or going into somebody else's life. So, and then also we have our sometimes from our pulpits, we hear that we're supposed to just pray things away. So there's a lot of disconnection that happens for us as black men, and a lot of stigma that's raised up, and there's a lot of fear of judgment. So that all goes into, should we even go to a doctor? Should we go to a mental health physician? Or should I just keep on working, keep on pressing? And on that physical end, I think of what's happening with Deion Sanders, who almost lost his leg. And it turned out that he had been running, walking, working on a dislocated foot for 20 years, and it almost killed him.
When we're moving in the direction of just the physical side of things, we've all been hesitant to go to the doctor. I'm 52 years old, and high cholesterol, prostate issues, the cancers that's prevalent in our communities, we seem to try to wish it away. Dr. Miles, do you find that because there are not a lot of black doctors in the field, when we do go to the white doctors, and the questions in the turnstile organization, 15 minutes in to 15 minutes out, and not really answering questions, how can we get better results from the healthcare system as black men?
So, like I said, if you can find African American professionals, like I said, the studies have shown you have better outcomes when you're treated by people who look like you. Now, the unfortunate part of it is there's a shortage, so we're not all going to be able to find that. But part of it is we just have to demand better, But we talked about it before, particularly with the older generation. So medicine, like everything, has evolved, and it wasn't too long ago, 20, 30 years ago, medicine was very paternalistic. You didn't ask questions. You just went in. The doctor was an authority figure. You didn't, a lot of times there was intimidation for, our parents and our grandparents' generation. And they didn't ask questions, and a lot of times doctors have a tendency to speak over your head. When they do talk, they're using terms and medical lingo that you don't understand. And so it's okay to say, hey, doc, I don't understand exactly what you're saying. Can you repeat that, and can you say it in simpler terms that I'm able to understand? It's also important that we educate ourselves, because so often I see people in the emergency room on 10 medicines, lots of medical problems. I can pull up the chart, and they've had heart surgeries, they've had strokes, they've had, just a litany of problems. And when I go and ask, do you have any medical problems? Well, doctor's got me on 10 pills, I don't know what they're for. Or, you have to ask my wife what that pill is for, particularly black men, ask my wife what that pill is for. My wife handles all my medicines. So some of it is we have to educate ourselves, because the doctor can talk until he's blue in the face, but if you're not going to receive it and try to educate yourself about the process, there's always going to be that disconnect. So I would say it first starts with, finding providers who look like us when we can, but when we can't, still trying to, when we're seeing white providers or providers that are, non-blacks, that, we still have to, make ourselves heard. We have to ask the questions. We have to, engage in the encounter and let them know when you don't understand things.
Very quickly, is there any particular website? All right. Is there any particular information out there where we can find doctors that look like us? Is there a list, I guess you could say?
So some communities have that. Unfortunately, there's not something like that in the Triangle area. And I'm actually in the process of working with some colleagues to try to get something like that for this area, because in other areas where I've lived, we had that. But again, it was not something that was put together by like national organizations. It was something that local people, the local providers just kind of got together and did. So yeah, I do know that. I don't know, unfortunately, there's not a lot of Black primary care providers in this area. I know lots of specialists. I know Black gastroenterologists and Black cardiologists, but particularly when we're talking about health screenings, what we need is the primary care providers, and there's not a lot in this area, but I am working with some friends to hopefully kind of put a network together and get some information out like that.
And I got one more part of the question here. Apparently, you mentioned earlier, I think you said statistics show when you're treated by someone who looks like you have better results. For your white counterparts that treat us, is there any way that can be measured or monitored that, hey, they're not they're not giving the proper level of care to this Black man?
Right. So there.
I know that's not easy.
Yeah. So it's not easy because there's so many inherent biases that people have, and it's difficult getting people to even realize they have those biases. So there are, programs out there monitoring it, and particularly now, with all of the diversity and inclusion kind of agendas that are going on out there, a lot of groups are actually doing that. And my group actually, it was just before COVID, so maybe 4 years ago now, actually started doing this kind of monitoring. And we actually have a diversity committee, and it's not just about trying to recruit a more diverse, cohort of providers, but we also are looking at are there disparities in the care that we're providing to the patients. So there are groups that are starting to take those initiatives now, but like you say, it's a very difficult thing because usually the thing driving that disparity are some inherent biases that people, a lot of times it's hard to get them to open their eyes and recognize that they even have those biases. But we are trying to educate our providers, particularly in my group.
Just as a follow-up, I know you mentioned several medications, and it seems like a lot of times when we go to the doctor, like say you might be nervous going in there and you have a high blood pressure reading. What are some strategies that we can do to kind of keep doctors from just pushing medicine? Because it seems like oftentimes that's what they're doing when they don't want to spend time with you. They just want to give you a prescription and then just kind of get you. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and again, I think that comes back to engaging with the doctors, because a simple question as, if the doctor says, hey, I want to start this blood pressure medicine, is as simple as saying, well, doctor, are there any other alternatives? Are there any other things we can try? Because you're right, particularly with high blood pressure, if it's mild or in the early stages, a lot of times that can be treated with lifestyle changes. Now, it's hard for us to do that sometimes, but a lot of times you don't need medicine. What you need to do is change your diet, exercise, try to lose weight. And so sometimes there are alternatives out there, for, other than going straight to medicines. But again, I think that's where the engaging and questioning the doctor and, don't just always accept that this is the only option. Hey, it's okay to ask, doctor, are there any other alternatives? Is medicine the only resort, or are there other things we can try before we go that route? Because a lot of times there will be alternatives.
So, Patrick, can you speak to that? Because that's something that we spoke about. The alternatives to medicine was with your healthcare screenings and lifestyle changes and diet changes, and that's something that we spoke on on the podcast earlier. What are some of your suggestions that you've come across that work for that?
Well, one of the things that the 100 Black Men has been doing is they've had this Healthcare 2.0 program where they were sending out medical devices to monitor your blood pressure, your glucose, your pulse oximeter, and so that you have a record of that information so that when you go to the doctor, maybe your blood pressure may be high then, but you have a record of showing, hey, my blood pressure was normal. So that's something we're doing. But also, I'm a yoga instructor, so I try to encourage people to take a look at, things like that, relaxation, meditation, yoga, things like that.
Okay. We talked about pushing medicines because every time you look at the TV now, you got a different medication for coughing, different medication for a stump toe. So as we're moving further towards just totality of men's black health, what are the most prevalent things that we need to start looking at and age ranges? As you're starting with your 20-year-old checkups, your 30-year-old checkups, your 40-year-old checkups. What things should we be looking for and monitoring more closely as we age and as our age progresses?
So generally speaking, it's going to vary from individual to individual because there are medical conditions that are hereditary. So if you have strong family history of certain things, then you may need to start screening earlier. But generally speaking, most 20-year-olds aren't going to have a lot of medical problems. Now, in this day and age, because of the way we eat, the sedentary lifestyles, what we've seen, as obesity has increased, people are getting diseases at a younger age, so we're seeing, I was just reading an article maybe 2 years ago where for the first time they were prescribing high cholesterol medicines were the most prescribed medicines in pediatric patients. So the diseases are certainly moving to younger and younger age groups, but it's all lifestyle. It's because we don't eat properly, we're more sedentary, and obesity is driving most of the illnesses that we're seeing at a younger age. So we're seeing kids develop diabetes earlier, we're seeing them to develop hypertension earlier, we're seeing them develop the high cholesterol earlier. But generally, if somebody's got a relatively active lifestyle and is keeping their weight within a reasonable range, most of the times in terms of health screenings, what we start recommending, because the main things, most 20-year-olds, you're going to go in, the doctor's going to check your vital signs, do an exam, maybe check a basic blood panel, and if nothing jumps out abnormal, they're not going to do much else. They're going to say, hey, see me again in a year. Obviously, as we get older and as we age, we're more likely to develop medical problems, and then the screenings become more extensive. So generally speaking, the types of things that we generally screen for are cancers, because what we know is that cancers are treatable when you catch them early. So the whole purpose of screening is to try to detect the cancer before you start developing symptoms of it, because typically by the time you develop symptoms or by the time you notice it, it's at a more advanced stage and it's going to be more difficult to treat at that point.
What are the major cancers that as black men that we should look for?
So black men is the big number one. We have the highest rates of prostate cancer, and so it's generally recommended. So it's always been that they've said you should start getting your screenings at age 50. There's a lot of stuff now saying maybe we need to do that a little earlier and start at age 45. Definitely if there's a family history and a first degree relative. So if you have brothers, sisters, or parent or dad with prostate cancer, is generally recommended that you start at age 45 with your screening. So prostate cancer is the biggest one for us. Now, obviously, with the other major cancers that we do screening for, so in women, we do breast cancer, cervical cancer screening. In men and women, we do colonoscopies to screen for colon cancer. So with all of those, now we don't have those at higher rates than white people, but because we tend to seek care later, because we tend to get the lower quality care, it's interesting. The whites have those cancers more often, but we die. We have a much higher mortality rate with those cancers. So, and part of that is because we don't get screened.
So when we talk about the screenings, how can we have more access to these screenings? How do we put on more screenings, and what would be the better practice to get more people out through those?
It's tough because, like you said, part of it's going to be breaking down that mistrust, because we talked about we got to first get black people to want to seek the medical care. You know, and a lot of it is, like I said, are going to be really difficult social things to tackle, because a lot of the barriers, like I said, is people are living below the poverty line, or people don't have medical insurance. And so you're just not going to get people to go who are feeling well, because remember, when we're talking about screening, you feel well. You're not having symptoms. It's very easy to get a person to go to the doctor when they can't breathe, or when their chest is hurting, or when their abdomen is hurting. But it's an entirely different thing when you're feeling completely fine and you don't have medical insurance, or you're working a minimum wage job, and I'm telling you, hey, you're 50, you feel fine, but you need to go somehow pay $5,000 out of pocket and get this colonoscopy. You know, so part of it is we got to address the social barriers, and then we got to address, like I said, the mistrust. So it has to be kind of approached from several different avenues.
Yeah, so it was more of a comment, but the gentleman got to the point. The underlying factor, from what I found, the real key is about insurance and availability of insurance when you were talking about quality of care. I've been fortunate to be affiliated with a number of different nonprofits. I just ended my tenure on the Community Advisory Board at Duke Cancer Institute Office of Health Equity. That is one of the major areas on what I was there for, was to talk about prostate cancer screenings and things of that nature, knowing about family history. But in looking for healthcare providers, things of that nature, I think one of the things that we have to do is sort of expand where we look for those resources. It might be unconventional. My experience in being with Duke and being with a number of different organizations, it's relationships between community groups that have these focuses, which really could be hard to find, but they all work in some type of relationship, whether it's from a university that have a base on public health, that may be connected with a hospital that try to do more peer education and get community groups out there to do conversations, provide free screenings, things of that nature, which was going to be one of my questions, because the free screenings is one of the best ways to get black men there. I know we average about 300 black men every year in Durham doing prostate cancer screenings. Every year for that, except maybe one year we didn't, but for the most part we were able to get them out. And some of the men didn't have health insurance, which is one of the big keys on why they don't go do those things. So we try to go to where they were, the barbershop. We would do, Brothers Against Prostate Cancer Awareness and have conversations and educate them there. So sometimes as black men, we just got to go where we are. We got to partner, and then we got to bring the information there. So it's going to be unconventional, but those examples are out there for us to be able to do to get the information to us. So I concur, 100% agree. My thought about the screening, about us when it comes to why we don't, I may have a harder line. I might be a little bit more, maybe not as sensitive to that degree, but as black men and as having as families and are looked as leaders and care providers, we cannot be selfish not to go get a screening, because the moment you leave, and I always tell black men to think about your history from your grandfather to whomever. Whenever one of our, I would say one of our leaders in my family leaves away, the dynamic of the family changes. It just does. It just changes. And so you have to think about that and think about yourself in that role, and what would it look like if I wasn't here? How would my family change? What would that dynamic look like if I'm not there? I put that weight on that more so, not going to my doctor to get my screenings to ask my questions. So it's about our mentality about what we need to be looking at and what we need to be doing when it comes to these screenings, and how serious we need to take it because of what we're leaving behind or could potentially leave behind, or what's there, right? So you've probably been a caregiver. I have. My dad got prostate cancer at 40. I was in college. So I have been proactive on screenings, 100%, everything. And insurance was able to allow me to get screenings at an earlier age because of my family history, or they wouldn't have paid for it, to your point about the dollars. So it's just a combination of different things out there. So I think we can just do, like I said, find some things that's unconventional, but I think we can get the information out there.
Did you have a question?
I didn't have a question. I was following up with that. I definitely think it's also a generation thing. So therefore, I think that there also needs to be, I wouldn't say I'm young, but younger side, I just turned 40, and there needs to maybe be more push on individuals my age and younger in order to put that pressure on the older generation. I mean, my father-in-law, we had found out a couple months ago, had some issues with high blood pressure, and he had been given high blood pressure pills, but wasn't taking them because his response was, I don't feel like I have high blood pressure. And I was like, it's not a feeling, you do. It's not a matter of debate. So it's just putting that pressure on them. And, like, following what Harvey said as far as making sure that they understand what the ramifications are, not just from a medical standpoint, if you don't take care of yourself, but the family dynamics of if you're not here, how the family changes when you're not here.
And I just wanted to point out that the Triangle East chapter, we're going to be doing a health fair April 22nd at the Wake Tech and Lewisburg Road, and we're going to be doing health screenings all day long. So if you know anybody that doesn't have insurance, they can come get free screenings, so we encourage you to come out for that. I wanted to get Victor into the conversation and start talking about mental health, and so I was wondering if you could kind of comment on what are some of the misconceptions, I guess, in the black community about mental health, and what are some ways we can try to overcome them?
So yeah, that was a little bit of what I was mentioning before, is that with mental health and the black community, there can be a lot of stigma around that. And then also looking at this connection between mental health and our medical health, if you will. Our bodies and our brains are not disconnected. So one of the things that I've been doing in Rocky Mount is starting something called connection circles, where I'm teaching people how to reduce the stress in their own bodies and in their lives, and how we move with each other, how we even, as black people, sometimes we can feel like we're under a lot of judgment. The things that we do, how we do them, even little things like, do I eat watermelon in front of white people? So these things, they weigh on us. There's so many things. If I'm walking down the street and I'm behind a white person, all these things that maybe we thought would disappear over the last 30 years, but they're not. If anything, it's getting worse. Right, it's going backwards. The blue lights go behind us, and it may not even be us, but our hearts jump out of our chests. So those are some of the pressures that we're carrying all the time, and that is a strain on our mental health. That's a strain on our ability to make good decisions. So all of these things really go together. So as far as how do we look at even being connected to each other, one of the beautiful things about the 100 is it is a place for black men to come together and to mentor children, young black boys, and to do that in concert with each other. The proximity of each other as black men, listening to each other and giving each other space is so important. It's so important that we have to get back to that. So in that vein, connecting with each other, listening to each other, being in space without judgment, practicing as Patrick is doing yoga. We can think of yoga as a body practice, but it's also very much a mental practice. How we breathe, how we move, how we communicate. All of these things affect us, and they contribute to what we call depression and anxiety and ADHD and all these other things. As human beings, we're connected, in all types of way. We feel each other when we walk into a room. We feel each other's, literally, our brains are communicating just by being in proximity to each other. So being aware of that and learning more about how we take care of ourselves and each other is super important. And let me say this, with the connection circles I've been doing, one of the things that I've heard from some of the participants has been the reduction in blood pressure. From how we look at each other, how we communicate with each other, how we address each other, and there's been a drop in blood pressure for some people who have actually gotten off of their blood pressure medication. And that's from managing stress.
So I think that's another component is, and we got a question real quick. I don't have my glasses, so I'm seeing cotton right now. Is as black men learning to support one another. Like in the barbershop, we found out that this is the space where most guys are safe. Like I know more about some of my clients than their own spouses know about them because we haven't been taught to communicate on a certain level to our spouses from our fathers. And this is one of the reasons that I wanted to bring Day-to-Day Dads and Fathers Forever in, because they're supporting a group of people that may have mitigating circumstances, but we all need that type of support. Like they offer modules, they offer different classes and tools that give us skill sets that our dads and our grandfathers may not have access to, right? And so, you know, learning how to be a father, I never had a manual, and so in some of the groups we had prior to this podcast, there was a question posed about, you know, a kid never being 16 or 17 years old, and the opposing question from the kid was, well, have you ever raised a 17-year-old dad? We all had an epiphany moment, like, no, we don't have experience at this rate either. And so as fathers, once we come to that conclusion that we need help too. So I just want to interject that real quick.
The question is, and this is for both of you, what are some clues for recognizing when you need to stop and spend time on self-maintenance?
Good question.
I would say when you wake up in the morning, before you go to bed, it's a recognition. And again, as black men, we are in a stressed environment just by opening our eyes. It's around us all the time. And acknowledging that, because if we ignore it, it's like ignoring your blood pressure, right? If we ignore these things that are around us all the time, it doesn't mean that they're not having an impact on us. So making it a daily practice to take care of ourselves is really important. But then especially if we do find ourselves not being comfortable with what we're doing, missing out on events, having lapses in memory, if we are having emotional highs and lows that don't fit the situation that we're in, difficulty sleeping. Sometimes we overlook that. Just the fact that we're having difficulty sleeping is really important. It's very important. Changes in our appetites, those are very important to pay attention to. Again, if we don't pay attention to them, they could be those early indicators, but more than likely it also indicates that we've already been missing some stuff. Okay, but now it's showing up, and where we see that in each other is really important to bring out as well. Being argumentative, being on the lookout for trouble all the time. You know, just because, what's that joke about? Just because I'm paranoid doesn't mean nobody's after me, you know, something like that. You know, we can feel that way, and it can be kind of real in our lives. So that's the first things I'm thinking about.
And I agree with all of that, and he covered pretty much most of what I was going to say. But I think the thing I will reiterate is you really have to take the outlook that self-maintenance is an ongoing thing that I should be doing on a daily basis. So it should never be a, let me wait until I see the warning signs, you know. So to me, it's just something that you make part of your daily routine, whether it be your yoga, whether it be exercising, whether it be whatever you like to do. You know, take a few minutes for yourself every day. If it's going outside in the garage and you like to rebuild cars or whatever it is you like to do, there should be that me time, and that self-maintenance time should be a part of every day, you know.
Okay. Good stuff, man. So we want to look at some of the everyday struggles also. You know, we're talking about the health of black males from different ranges, but the day-to-day things, work, kids, spouses, relationships, ex-spouses, you know, all of the above. How do we in that self-maintenance thought, you know, wrap our heads around waking up in the morning, and we're always being told as black men how we're supposed to do things, how we're supposed to operate. You can get a catalog from any gambit of places about what a black man is supposed to be. How do we balance that physically and mentally? That's a loaded question. And I think everybody here took a breath when I said and this is for anybody in the room as well, you know, because I think if we share knowledge about what our life experiences have given us, then we don't do enough of this saying, hey, this is the life hack I used.
So it's not just incarcerated men, but it's in men in general. How do we deal with depression? And how do we deal when things is not going our way? You know, how do we deal with that anxiety of our spouse, our ex-spouse, or whatever, coming down on our backs, and, you know, we're trying to make the right decision. We don't always make the right decisions, and sometimes put our families in jeopardy, and have to deal with the anxiety of that. And so, in dealing with a lot of the guys, I grew up in a household with my dad, and then I became worked for Wake County Human Services for 25 years as a social worker. In the meantime, I became a single father with 3 kids, 7, 9, and 11, that I had to raise by, pretty much. And so I had to deal with a lot of fatherhood issues. And I came to the conclusion that, number one, God is our source, a shadow of doubt. And number 2, we need one another. And you have to find somebody who you can talk to and let things out. And you don't need to get the guy that tells you, you know, don't worry about, you know, your wife is, go screw around on her like she's doing you. You don't need that kind of guy in your life. You need somebody who's going to tell you the truth, that you can be accountable to, and you hold each other accountable. I don't tell you nothing that you don't tell me. If I'm going to air my dirty laundry, you are yours too. And when we have that relationship with somebody, it helps relieve things that when we're going under pressure, we can go talk to. Now let's shift a little bit to the incarcerated fathers. As you know, that's even worse, because now they're dealing with their crime that they committed, or didn't commit for that matter, because justice is always justice. And they got to deal with the fact that, you know, I'm pulling this. If I was white, if I had a lawyer, I would have got out on probation. But now I'm incarcerated for 5 years for a crime that I didn't commit. And so there's a lot of things that they're struggling with. And one of the things that we have to do in general is find out a way of forgiving people. If you don't find out a way to forgive people, if you don't let things go, it'll eat your lunch. It'll take you out. It'll make you do stuff that you regret doing. And so we have to find ways of, how do I forgive this injustice? How do I forgive this person who did me wrong? And those are the things that I believe that, you know, when I used to sit down and as a social worker, and I'm sitting down and I'm doing the biosocial, I'm asking them about their life and their parents. When I ask that question, was your daddy there? And that box is unchecked. Father is not there. So this guy now, or this lady for that matter, are growing up with bitterness, resentment, and angry. I know the first time I started doing therapy, and I asked this guy, and he just broke down and started crying. I didn't know what to do with that. My therapist was there, was training me, and the first thing I did was give him a box of tissue. So after the service was over, the session was over, she looked at me and she said, "Why did you give him that tissue?" And I'm thinking, he's starting all over the place, he's crying. She said, "But really, why did you give him that box of tissue?" It kind of pissed me off because I didn't really know why. But about 4 o'clock in the morning, it hit me like a ton of bricks why I gave him that tissue. It's because I was uncomfortable with him crying. Because we don't cry like that. Especially really big black guys, we don't cry. You don't do that. And so we have to find that place where we can let down the tears. They say men tear and we cry in the dark, yeah. But sometimes we need somebody to hold our hand. I'm not talking about being gay, none of that stuff. You know what I'm talking about. We need somebody that we can be honest with, and they can be honest with us, that we can be transparent. So there's a whole lot of things that go along with that, and I'll stop now because I could talk about this all day. But so incarcerated fathers really, really, they have we really have to figure out a way to try to get them while they're incarcerated and teach them how to be dads, even while they're incarcerated. That's why we started Dads at a Distance, that we're teaching these men while they're incarcerated how to be fathers. You can do things while you're incarcerated, and that's one of the things that we've been doing. So, like I said, I could talk about this all day, so.
Amazing, amazing. One more time.
Thank you. Just to piggyback on what Glenn was talking about there, as far as men and just being able to express and show your feelings in a positive manner and not feeling shameful about it. That is one of the sessions that we have in our day-to-day dads. We have a 12-session curriculum where we cover everything from handling feelings, to co-parenting with mom, to men's health, men's mental health, physical health, what it means to be a dad, what it means to be a man. And and we also have support groups that occur every fourth Thursday. And I'm new to this particular human service industry, but I did retire from the police department, so there is a certain part of knowing how to deal with people and just being empathizing with people when they're dealing with their trials and tribulations, because generally when you see a police officer, it's probably not one of your best days, quite honestly. So, I always, and I try to develop a good rapport with people because, whether I take you to jail or don't take you to jail, my paycheck the same. I'd rather be able to help you than take you to jail. Now, there's some people you had to take to jail for their own health, for their own betterment. There was a young lady I would arrest from time to time because she's out there on that stuff. When I couldn't get it to her mom, and she loved me to death till this day. I saw her not too long. She loved me to death because she knew that I had her best interest in heart. So, which brings me to say, at the end of the day, when we're having fellowship like this, this is what men need, without being judgmental, like Glenn mentioned, the guy crying, which made me think about one of my support groups. One of the dads, he was, and a lot of guys have a lot of history that a lot of trauma that they don't want to deal with. But at first he was pretty opposed to it because he was mandated by the court to participate. But as we talked, there's probably about 7 or 8 guys on a particular call. As we began to have conversation and guys started sharing stuff, he realized he wasn't the only one dealing with that stuff. He had that trauma, and so did a lot of other guys. But we just got to be open, and there's a certain thing being vulnerable that helps people heal. And this program's kind of near and dear to my heart because I used to use the term, my father wasn't really in my life, just to clean it up a little bit. But the truth be told, I met him one time for about 60 seconds. So I used to say, yeah, my father wasn't really in my life. He wasn't in the life. A 30-second, 30 to 1 minute interaction is not in the life. But that was my way of dealing with it. You know what I mean? Oh, he wasn't really in my life. You know, man, I saw him today. I want to know who the hell he was, quite honestly. You know, so we have to be vulnerable in some sense when we're dealing with certain things in order to heal. Okay. Speaking of the fellowship, I'm gonna pass some of these flyers around. We have a fatherhood conference coming up in June. Glenn, of course, Glenn helped put the thing together. He's been doing it for years. He's modest. He ain't talking about it, but I'm gonna talk about it. Damn it! But it's June 17th. I'm past this program around. It's from last year. Just give you an idea. It doesn't cost anything. There'll be a lot of similar sessions to this. Saturday the 25th, we're having what we call a barbershop buzz, where guys going like same thing Jimmy mentioned, you know, basically a barbershop therapy. There are a couple of barbershops in the area that we're going to deal with, which is Billionaires Barbershop at Tower Shopping Center, and then Diamond Cuts, which is in Garner. And we'll have several each month leading up to the conference. So it's just a matter of us trying to help one another along, man, in this journey, especially as a black man. It's nothing else like it, man. You know, there are highs and lows with it. You know, the highs and lows of fatherhood, man. Best thing in the world was being a father. But it can be the most challenging thing in the world at the same time, you know. I've been blessed like the brother over here. He said he's got two amazing children. I have 4 amazing children and a great wife. You know, I've been blessed beyond my wildest dreams. You know, by the grace of God, my health is pretty good. You know, so you got to be thankful for the small things, basically what he's saying, I believe. And this forum like this here, I appreciate Jimmy for having it. You know, but day to day, I'm put some cards out here, some flyers and stuff. And if you can't utilize the program, you might know someone that can. It doesn't cost anything. We have sessions, you know, we'll have them throughout the month. Just, you know, talk and fellowship, man. You know, some guys that have been involved in it, get involved, they thought they were doing the right thing. They're doing the best they could, but you only know what you know. You know what I mean? So I guess the challenged fathers, we help to make them better fathers. The good fathers, we make great fathers, and the great fathers, we make them greater fathers. You know, and Lord knows I don't have all the answers, so that's why we come together collectively. You know, but I'll pass some of these around, and I just appreciate you inviting me here, Jimmy. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
For me,
Hold it to a turn green. There you go.
For me, one of the things that I do, never had any experience working with anybody in corrections prior to me moving to North Carolina. You know, I had previously been a kindergarten teacher, worked at Job Corps, and so my thing is that the recipe that you've always used for your kindergartners and your 16 to 24-year-old kids is to use it for the inmates. Took the job, didn't know that I would be working with people who committed murder, sex offenders, assault and battery and everything. I thought it would be just like simple breaking and entering type deals. But my motto is positive over negative. I always look for the positive in your day and don't go to bed with negative thoughts. So with my reentry class, the thing about them is that they feel as if everybody has always judged them for what they do. The first minute they walk in my class, I say, I don't know your name, you don't know my name, I don't care what you've done. But from 1 o'clock to 3 p.m. for 4 weeks, we're in here, we're not gonna talk about what crimes you have committed. We're gonna talk about how you can become a better man. The majority of the people that I work with are African Americans. And so one thing that always gets them is week 3, and I bring up fatherhood. I ask them, was your father in your life? And like they mentioned earlier, you know, like some men, you know, big guys, they feel as if they can't express emotions because they feel like you're going to be called a punk or a chump or something like that. And I tell them, you know, we become family when you have class with me. And so I tell them in their journey and their walk, I give them positive quotes at the beginning of the class. We watch motivational videos that deal with positive stuff, whether it's Eric Thomas, Kobe Bryant, The Rock, Michael Jordan, just all kind of people. I just display positive manners to them because a lot of them, they've had so many negative thoughts. They've been taught that they're not going to be anything. They've come from households where dad may have left them, mom may have left them. But the thing is that I always display that positive stuff and tell them to open up. And that's the thing about it. Like, once I tell them, just be open and honest with us, that's when they start to open up. And sometimes this is the first time that they ever opened up to somebody because they feel as if people are going to judge them. So that's what I've done.
Absolutely. And so this is the part where this kind of collection of guys coming together and finding out different resources. Like often we have multiple groups working on similar things, right? But if we're always working as such a diverse or divided group of people, we get very little done. So my hope is that as we have more of these roundtable discussions, that what your group is doing, what your group is doing, what your group is doing, if somebody needs them, now we have resources that we can all pull together versus, we all just kind of swimming in the ocean by ourselves. I think we definitely want to touch on finances at some point in time, but I think we're going to leave that as another possible roundtable discussion. But if there's anything, like, again, we're trying to just kind of bind ourselves together as a group of men to give ourselves better resources. That's my goal with Barbershop Therapy. Like, I run across so many people. It's the crossroad where all men meet. I got lawyers, doctors, therapists, just a variety of people that are coming through these spaces. So I think we got to better put together our resources and use them a little better than we currently have.
All right, I have a question. What was your name again? Patrick. You said you're a yoga instructor. So we have classes at our office 2-3 times a week for guys in our program to take substance abuse, financial literacy, tasks, stuff like that. Would you or know somebody who's interested in doing something like that, coming in, giving these guys a different perspective? One point, a year or so ago, right before the pandemic, we had a garden, and you'd be surprised how many guys took to honing the garden, picking tomatoes and stuff like that. We also had a chicken coop. We have guys go out there. You would think a guy 6'2", 300 pounds and scared of a chicken, but they are. But once they learn certain things, you'd be surprised they start asking me questions. Why you do this? Why you do that? So I always wanted to take yoga. So if I know I'm gonna do it, it's somebody else to do it. So that would be something different, out of the norm, that our guys can see that sometimes triggers different things.
Yeah, I'd definitely be interested in doing that. I've been a yoga instructor for about 4 years, and when I initially took yoga teacher training, I really had no intention on teaching, but what ended up happening was our health and wellness chair, Morris Harris, was one of my students from my initial class, and he liked the class so much that he said, we need to do this for the chapter. And for so many, I've been doing yoga for over 20 years, and many times when I'm in a class, I'm the only black person there. And it is something that can heal the body. I have classes that can help with high blood pressure, diabetes. I'm actually teaching a chair yoga class on Monday for some seniors who have some mobility issues. And so I'm definitely open to doing it. I'm always looking for an audience. It's just hard to find black people that want to try yoga. But I have beginner level classes, and definitely, let me know when you want me to come in.
Right. So you mentioned earlier about the brain and the body connecting, which I've been trying to do some study on that recently. It's amazing how we have people in general have disconnected, but by and large, the black people, we have, for whatever reason, maybe we haven't been taught about the connection with the brain and yoga, and so I'm very open to that. We had a lady that came in one time, and her name is Betty Murchison. I don't know if you maybe know her, but she said, "Do you think the guys want to color?" I'm thinking, hell no, these guys ain't gonna color. No. She's like, we ain't give it a try. And I did, and it blew me out the water. Every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, these guys called the bus to our office and sit there and color for 2 hours. And at the end of it, we had, you go to the office now, you'll see a wall full of paintings that the guys did. So a lot of times we haven't been exposed to things, so we don't know what it is, what it's like. And so that pump your, your mind, your brain to, this is something else that we can use to help heal ourselves or make the connection. So we definitely open to those.
Yeah, if we think about ourselves as African American men, as African Americans, we are literally not in our indigenous culture. We are literally not. So in our indigenous cultures, in our African cultures, yes, we painted, we made jewelry, we made all kinds of colorful things. We were creative, we built pyramids, we created sciences. We did all kinds of things that, unfortunately, quite often our kids are told is not natural to us as African people. Okay, so we're not. I'm just going to say we're not at home. We're not in the culture that we developed, and I think that's part of us getting back to our whole humanity. Is the understanding that the brain and the body were not separate things as we have been taught through European culture. So through European culture is very top down. It's all about, the thinking brain and just trying to decipher things and really separating the brain from the body, separating men from women, separating humans from other humans. That's not natural development. Natural development is far more complex, far more multifaceted. And even in this space that we're in, we are literally right now processing information from the body up into the brain, not from the brain down. But we have been taught a way that was, backwards. And it works really well to separate people from their creativity, from their relationships, from their peacefulness, from their health. It works really well to tear people apart. So being revolutionary about this whole thing means really getting back to the way that we developed as human beings tens of thousands of years ago without interference, and reclaiming all of that beauty and joy and art and science and philosophy, and reminding ourselves that our people were the people that the rest of the world came to get education. And I see a bunch of heads nodding, but do we even say that? Or do we feel kind of, I might not say that because that's going to make somebody upset? Well, it's true. It's true. What's the cat's name? Hippocrates? Right, he's identified as the father of medicine. The guy went to Egypt and learned from Imhotep. There you go, brother. He learned from the writings of Imhotep, who had already passed away. So much of what we call high intellect has been divorced from its origins, which is our people.
The one thing I want to add, and I'm sorry if I missed this, guys, I had to walk out for a second, is food. I don't know if we've spoken about food, but food is critical. And I just want to speak to this from a personal perspective. After I graduated from college, I, through that process, I probably added about 15, 20 pounds that was not healthy. I kept that, I'm 43 years old, I kept that 15, 20 pounds on for 20 years. And it just so happened about a year and a half ago, I got pretty sick. And I've always worked out and, tried to eat okay, but not the right way. But when I got sick, I was in the bed for a day and a half, couldn't eat, so I didn't have an appetite. And at that time, I was going through and I was reading and researching, and I started eating a lot of fruits. Started eating more fruits and tried to make fruit about 50% of my diet, because the water that you get from the fruit is actually nutritious as opposed to the water that you drink like this. And what I've started to do, the habits that I formed coming out of that has totally almost, it's transformed my life, because your brain, we talk about the brain, the body, it's your gut is directly connected, and it drives so many things. And I'm typically a really optimistic and happy, gregarious guy, but it's gone to another level now that my gut is back in place, right, after 15 or 20 years. So just wanted to add that to the conversation, that the food you eat, and that's one of the things for us as black people, that we have one of the most negative relationships around food of any group of people in the world, actually. So it's a big, big, big piece.
Man, this is some of the best information, we can get as a group, and being able to share this, the vulnerabilities, the triggers, the traumas, the understanding, the life hacks. This is what we have to do more of, sharing of resources to better us as men. And again, for me, with Barbershop Therapy, I'm looking at this as, if we're better men amongst ourselves, then we're better men for our families, right? And if we're better men for our families, then our boys know how to be better men. We talk about a lot of mentoring groups and things of that nature, of mentoring the kids, but it's the men that need the mentoring. We need a little more intuitiveness, and people to teach us how to be better at what we're doing day to day throughout our life. And I appreciate everybody that has participated today. We're going to do this again. I just like to thank and acknowledge all the groups that showed up. 100 Black Men, Fathers Forever, Day-to-Day Dads. I'm sorry, your group again. Okay, awesome. If anybody has anything else they'd like to add to this tonight, man, and we'd love to hear, before we step into this next session, we're gonna do this again, definitely.
So is there a directory of resources that you all are working on, so that, because this has been really good, and my hope is that we will take advantage of it. How do we take advantage of the resources?
So for me, that is going to be a goal for Barbershop Therapy, is to pool resources. So I'm working on websites to include everybody that's participating every time we do something as a pool of resources. So when you go to our page, you'll be able to say, okay, I need somebody working with fathers. I need somebody working with mentors. I need someone working with kids. Again, groups are already doing these things already. And like I said, if we can start publicizing them through different, everybody helping each other to publicize the different groups instead of working individually, that'll help. That'll definitely happen.
Well, I just wanted to wrap up. I want to thank you all for coming out for this event. There's definitely a great conversation, and hope that we will continue to have these conversations about other issues that affect our community. But thanks again, and did you have something, CJ?
Oh, yeah, I did want to say one thing. This program was a part of a grant that we also received, so I did also want to encourage you guys to take a look at takeactionforhealth.org. Just go to the website, and that has some resources as well, too. This has been a very informative program as well, too. I just took notes of some resources that we came up with. I mean, like the Connection Circle was mentioned, the yoga was another, and also maybe like a pain and sip program as well too. So thank you all for coming out.
All right, well, we're gonna wrap it up again. This has been another session of Barbershop Therapy with 100 Black Men of America. We appreciate you tuning in. Subscribe, repost, comment, click, all the good things you want to do to it. Thank you. Barbershop Therapy, we cut through the problems.